Alrighty, good evening, everybody. We're so happy to be here. Welcome to episode 8 of season 4 of GameSense. Thank you all for watching. We're really excited, like I said, to be here. It's going to be a great show. We got a couple of great guests, so let's get to it. First off, I want to thank our sponsor, Symbotic. Symbotic is a company in Wilmington, Massachusetts, who builds automated robotic warehouses. It's really cool stuff. Check it out at symbotic.com for all their cool technology, and thank them for all the support they give to us, because without them, we couldn't do what we do. Also, I want to give a shout out to our director for the night, Stephanie Morrison. She's behind the scenes as always. And I'd like to very quickly give a shout out to each of our hosts tonight. So joining us is Evan Morrison. He's from Team 5803. Matt Stark from Team 174. Clinton Bollinger, he's from Team 2337. And our two distinguished guests of the evening. First up is Jack Fisher. Jack, you're from Team 973. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Alrighty, so I'm a second-year mechanical engineering major at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I've been doing FIRST for 6 years. I was actually on 973 as a student, graduated, went to a local college, and then came back as a mentor.
Cool, so, awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, our second guest for the evening is Kevin Sheridan. Kevin, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
All right. Hey, guys. I'm a mentor on 254 since 2014. I've been involved in FIRST since I was in middle school, which was way back in like 04. Took a break when I went to college, and then I joined 254 right after I graduated. And I started drive coaching last year. So
awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show, Kevin. It's great to have you here as well. All right, cool. So we're going to do our normal show. We're going to talk for about an hour or so, and after that we're going to have a 20 or 30 minute Q&A with everybody here. So if you've got questions for us or for our guests, type them into the Twitch chat with the ! Q followed by your question. When you do that, our Twitch chat bot's going to read it, pick it up, and send it to us, and if we like your question, we'll answer it live on air. All right, our last disclaimer: we don't take ourselves too seriously, and we hope that you don't either. Have fun, be chill, and if you don't like what we have to say, go out there and prove us wrong. Well, in case anybody didn't notice, we weren't on the air the last 2 weeks because there was a little thing going on called First Champ Live that we were running at the two championship events that happened this past month in Houston and St. Louis. They were both a lot of fun.
Presented by Qualcomm.
Of course, presented by Qualcomm, as always. It was a lot of fun to be there, a lot of fun to do the show. But we're glad to be back here with two awesome guests. So let's start it off by going around the horn. Kevin, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you saw at the last couple of championships?
Yeah. I mean, I had an absolute blast with both champs and watching how the game changed from the regionals we played to what we saw at Houston and then what we saw at St. Louis. We played a different game from our first regional in week 3 at San Francisco. We just shot fuel, got 2 rotors. Our next event, we had to get 4 rotors, and we shot more fuel. And then we get to champs. We're going against all these district teams that have played a lot. They've played a game at a higher level than we got experience in California. And we got absolutely blasted by defense in a lot of matches, which is something we rarely saw in California. And it was really cool. Like, the game was completely different for us, despite we're still going for 4 rotors, still getting 40 KPA, but it was a lot tougher. 4 rotors is happening much faster, so it was real interesting to see how that play out.
Very cool. Jack, why don't you tell us a little bit of what you saw at the events this week?
Alrighty. Well, me, like many other people, are not a huge fan of the 2 champs method, but certainly enjoyed being able to go play a championship, come home. We had a huge team party that weekend, watched our buddies at 254 win the whole thing, and nice to have California representing at the Festival of Champions. The other thing I saw, California, everyone was much more into shooting. Kind of like the video we posted right before championship with the 5 best shooters all going at it at the 254 shop.
That was a fantastic video, by the way.
I think it's interesting to note that of the 5 teams showcased in that video, we had 2 world champions, 1 world finalist, and 2 division finalists. So maybe fuel does matter a little bit.
Yep, it's certainly matters the most to 971. But and then we actually had never scored a 4-rotor match before we made it to champs at our first regional at CVR. The only way we could beat the 13-23, 16-78 combo was by hitting the 4-rotor, and we were one gear short every time. So champs was the first time for us making 4-rotors, and we never looked back.
Nice. Cool. All right, so my turn next. I'm going to say I was astonished and happy to see that Einstein ended on time this year. 1 out of 2 times. But it's still, Einstein ended like on time for, I believe, the first time in the history of ever. Like it was scheduled to be 4.5 hours long, to be fair. But they did hit almost exactly 4.5 hours, and it was done. So good job, St. Louis, for getting an Einstein ending on time. We can talk about Houston later on. But next up, Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you want to talk about this week?
Sure. It was neat to be a part of First Champ Live, and I was a part of the one at Houston, and it was really neat to see the group of people interacting, and particularly the two that have gotten the biggest shout outs online was Nation and Nick, and they just did an amazing job. Their analysis was right on par, and the history between them was great, and it just worked out really well. And it was also really cool to watch the Blue Alliance as support behind the scenes for us. Their data online for everybody to look at in real time was awesome. So that all of that stuff this year really amped up to a new level, and it was cool to use it and cool to see what people could do with it in real time at championships.
Cool. Yeah, and I got to say thank you, Matt, for doing a great job on the desk as well. Don't sell yourself too short there. Although, as you say in our doc here, the bromance between Nick and Mason was strong. All right, Clint, what do you got for us this week?
As a lot of people have already been saying, the fuel in the end ended up mattering. I know in the district model, a lot of teams in Michigan actually removed their shooters. Some of the well-known teams even removed the ability to pick up fuel off the ground. In the end, that's what made the difference of all the matches at both Houston and St. Louis. It was kind of come down to a shootout. Everyone got their 4 rotors. Everyone tried to play a little bit of D to slow that down. But in the end, whoever shot the most ended up coming on top and winning the event.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Clint. Absolutely. All right. Last but not least, Evan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think kind of looking back on the season, there's all you can get lost in the minutia, but First took some pretty big risks this year. And I think for the most part they've panned out with the real-time scoring and having human players on the field. There were a little bit of issues. A lot of people complained early on about the processing rate of the boilers, et cetera. But in the end, they worked almost as advertised. And there were no major incidents with the pilots as far as safety concerns go. So kind of hats off to First for executing on those parts. I think we can debate some of the other stuff later, but that stuff actually worked pretty well.
Yeah, that's true. I got to be honest with you. When I saw the boiler, I was expecting it to be a lot less accurate than it was. And I think it was pretty okay, all things considered.
And I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the Shrek, that emergency boiler counter processor thing that they came up with early on, it either never had to be used or it only had to be broken out once during like practice day. But for the most part, those things did stay working.
Yes,
which I think is kind of incredible given First history with moving field design components. That to be able to come up with a design like that and have no major failures with the whole game riding on it all season long is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, now that we're done talking about the impressive parts of this, let's talk about the Houston Championship from a few angles here. So first up, I want to a lot of us, I think 4 of us were there. 2 of us were competing, Evan and Jack. Jack, why don't you tell us about your impressions of we'll say the George R. Brown Convention Center and how the championship layout was and how you thought it compared to other championships you've been to this year, or not this year, but other championships you've been to.
Yeah, so I actually really liked the division layout. They had plenty of bleacher seats, and I like that members of our team especially, they always like to try to get as near to the field as possible, which at St. Louis is always a bit of a challenge. So being able to pretty much walk to every division and see anything you really wanted to, all the pits in the same area as usual. The only complaint I had was not enough practice fields. With just 2 practice fields per 3 divisions, was a little bit of a time spent in line just waiting to have your chance to go. But I was really happy with how it all worked out, and there were no major issues for us.
Yeah, Evan, you're with the team as well. What were your impressions?
Yeah. I'd echo what Jack said. I think logistically, George R. Brown Convention Center was a fantastic venue. To me, it lacked a little bit of the championship feel. You don't have that kind of wow factor of walking into the dome and having this whole spread of fields open up, and it was a little bit segregated, which was nice in some aspects. Audio bleed over was much better than it normally is in the dome, where you can hear the field next to you almost as well as you can hear your own. And the seating was great, as Jack mentioned. But you didn't really get the impression of how big of an event it was, because you could only see one field at a time, really. So I missed that. I missed the cool lighting, and I missed it even more watching St. Louis online and kind of remembering all of that emotion of being in the dome, and for the students down on the field and for the spectators up in the stands. I think it's a different feel. That being said, being able to go between the pits and the field really easily was really a great addition, and we didn't have any major logistics problems with food, with transportation, with anything at the convention center. It was really smooth.
Cool. Yeah, and I gotta say, I gotta agree with you, because I never really got a sense of the scale of the event until I had to go to Turing, which is all the way at the other side of the venue from where we were for First Champ Live. Basically, I just saw the 3 fields and like some of the pits, and then when I had to run to the other side of the venue, through the 3 fields and through the pits, not running through the pits, don't do that. But as we see in our Chief Delphi, but I agree with you. It did sort of like surprise me. There was like this whole other championship going on the other side of the room, but I kind of echo your sentiments. I think it was pretty okay. So let's talk a little bit about the actual competition that was going on, and 973 and your trip through to Einstein eventually. So tell us a little bit about what you guys, how you guys experienced Roebling. You ended up coming out on the #1 seed, and then picking your partners. So tell us a little bit about your qualification schedule, and then sort of how the playoffs went.
Yeah, so pre-champs, we were really happy with our schedule. We thought we were going to hit a lot of 4-rotor matches and not really go up against a lot of 4-rotors. We knew ahead of time that we had the strongest middle pack of gear robots. So we knew that our depth for selection, once Alliance came around, was going to be pretty good. We also knew there were a couple of standouts in the crowd. So 10-11 especially. We were looking at average gears and we were looking at max gears, because sometimes you have to make a call. Do I go for a team that has reasonable average all the time, or do I go for someone who might get me 2 more gears in a match when I need it? So we really needed first seed to be able to shape it in our way. With the amount of 4-rotors that were actually happening, our path to first seed became a lot harder to achieve. We thought we were going to be able to go out there, hit the KPA every match, hit a 4-rotor in maybe 3 to 4, and pretty much lock it up almost by the first day. Because our earlier matches were our most favored 4-rotor. Hangs failed from our alliance partners, and we lost a few matches, and pretty soon it became a much more even contest for first seed. So, with how luck goes in this game, we were able to scrape it up, take the first seed, and we actually ended up being able to pick, from our data, the 1st, 4th, and 5th best gearbots in our division.
Yeah, I'd agree. Being on Roebling as well, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So, and all our partners were fantastic. And I was really happy that we actually got to play every one of our partners almost about equally. 2028 played through the entire division, and then we went to Einstein and we started to see the other alliances that we were going to be going up against, And our whole strategy was gears down the field per second, hitting the four-rotor as quickly as possible so that you have two partners ready to go on to defense. And earlier, and especially in our division, we were helping carry a lot of the load for gear scoring. We were scoring between 3 to 4 a match and hitting the KPA. And what I wanted to do that whole time was get it so that 10-11 and 29-28 or 54-99 could essentially carry the load, almost like 125's alliance, and give us a lot more margin to shoot, because I knew we would be going up against some double shooter alliances, especially the 118 and 1678 combo, where if they both had full time to shoot, there was no way that we would be matching. There's no way we'd be matching them for balls if they were both shooting. But they have to score gears as well, and we'll talk about that more a little bit later. But our division run was pretty clean, pretty straightforward. We set milestones because the last couple seasons, our biggest struggle has been, first, and 254 has had the same thing, oddly enough, was get out of quarterfinals, then make it out of the division. So we played it safe. We took one milestone at a time, and then found us all the way up into the finals and then on to Einstein. So going into, unless you guys want to take it for a second, but I can move on into Einstein.
Well, yeah, I actually have a question before we get to Einstein about some of the thinking, and I think hearing you talk about get out of quarters and then get out of the division, how that plays into it. But I think a lot of people were expecting you guys maybe to pick up Miskar, especially with how deep the division was with gear scorers. And so, there weren't many of us that thought maybe 10-11 was the right pick until you kind of saw the alliance come together and realized how powerful that was. So how did you guys kind of work that out for what you were looking at strategically for both getting out of the division and then looking ahead towards trying to win a championship?
So going into the division, before we showed up on day one, we were really favoring the human player robots. Just because we had kind of thinking back to our design decisions, we spent a lot of time just practicing gear pickup, since our gear claw was not optimal for easy pickup. So we just kind of had a sense that the human player robots were going to be faster, and 1574 going into champs had a human player gear mech, and they were decent. They were hitting about 4 to 5 gears a match. Where we were better than them was the shooting. If they would hit above 20 KPA in auto, and then it would take them a solid 2 dumps, maybe even 3 to finish it. For us, we were hitting above 30 by that point, and it would really only take us 1. And day one at champs, I find out that they're putting on a ground pickup gear claw, and just kind of going over and giving it a look over. I wasn't really confident in the structural design of what they replaced their human player gear slot with, and we were looking for a gear robot when it came down to it. And I think if we were to have picked 1574, it would have been due to us being afraid that they could make an alliance that could beat us at the four-rotor and beat us at balls, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah, okay. I think it makes a lot of sense, and we kind of saw it echoed throughout some other divisions as well. We haven't talked about St. Louis yet, but 125 kind of went down the same path on Carson, and that served them well also. So, obviously the results speak for themselves, but I think it's interesting to hear the insight going into that.
Yeah. And 10-11, from pre-scouting the division, we knew 10-11 was a great robot, and just then getting to meet them on practice day and all their students, and it was like that's one top program about to make it up to the next level. They're just an amazing group.
Well, and anybody that didn't see them before championship, I think, especially us on Roebling division, they were head and shoulders above everybody else for gears. It wasn't close.
Yeah, it ended up being for me a little bit of a surprise because I didn't really get a chance to look at like Arizona that often. You don't really ever a lot of like high power teams coming out of it. But when we were watching First Champ Live, seeing them do what they were doing was a surprise to me. Probably not a surprise to you guys though, because you were actively competing. But so before we go on, I want to talk a little bit about one of the other divisions that kind of made a bit of a splash there. Obviously, we're talking about Newton, and we're gonna roll the video of Newton and their still standing highest scoring match from the divisional rounds. This is, of course, with the 118-16-78 and I get the screen up, 41-88 alliance. So they went with like 2 shooters, obviously, and your division, as you said, you definitely wanted to pick 10-11. Did you get the chance to see or hear about this match before you went on to Einstein?
I'd seen it on the Blue Alliance, but didn't really get a chance to watch the match video before we got to play. There were other pressing issues to deal with on Einstein.
Fair enough. Yes. So I guess my thought is when I saw this, I no offense to you and your alliance, I thought you guys would get absolutely obliterated when I saw this in the dome or in the GRB. It was an incredible performance by both of these alliances. They did a really, really fantastic job of both these teams. And like at that point, I didn't know if anybody could possibly score more points than that. So I guess the thought is, if you didn't get to see the video and you saw it on the Blue Alliance, what went through your mind when you saw they put up, over 550 points?
Well, first I assumed that it was probably a pretty uncontested match in terms of they were able to hit the 4-rotor with enough time to shoot. And I think we're really underselling how much a big deal playing outdoors in sunlight was to our alliance and especially to the 16-78 118 alliance. 118 shooter more than any of ours really relied on good vision. And I never actually got to speak to them too much about what whether they were running it or not, but as far as I was concerned, or as far as I heard, pretty much no one was able to see, especially earlier. And by the end of it had gotten dark enough, but I don't think the Newton Alliance was able to shoot as effectively as they were in their division, because I don't think they were able to line up as fast, shoot as accurately, and know that it was going to work. So I think they started to look down the path of more hit the 4-rotor defense, just get enough to hit the KPA. But then once it got dark enough, I think their shooters started to work. But keep in mind, I mean, our alliance, we had the freedom for our partners to essentially do the 4-rotor on their own with a little bit of help from us. And we would score gears just to make it easier for them, finish the 4-rotor faster, so that they could go on to defense. The Newton Alliance, both, all 3 of their robots, and I think 1678 was taking the biggest burden on the gear scoring, had to work together to finish the 4-rotor. Right. And they only had time at the end of the match to shoot, because it was, hit the 4-rotor, then go to shoot. Mm-hmm. It's a luxury to be able to score 2 gears and then shoot and then go get another gear, fill up with balls and take it on the field and come back and shoot again.
Yeah, that's true. And so since you brought it up, let's kind of talk a little bit more about Einstein and that whole experience. So this was obviously, I'll say it right now. For those of you who are watching online, it was kind of a crapshoot from like a spectator standpoint. And I, to be honest with you, I heard a lot of rumors about different things that happened. So I don't want to, if you don't want to talk about it too much, Jack, I understand, but do you want to tell us a little bit about how it was sort of getting into the venue and then the pits and then the field and kind of how that all came together or didn't?
So after divisions ended, we were all just told to get into a line and head down to about where the Carver division was. And they were loading our stuff up in trucks. So everything except the robot went into a truck, and we were just told, all right, it'll meet you over at the venue. Then we got into, I guess, what first called a robot parade, which was really just a big line of everyone pushing their robots over to the dome. And they took us around the back. They had us all go through metal detectors, just like everyone else, and then walk down into the arena. And they bring us out, and they assigned us into our pit spaces, which were pretty much, they're about 6 feet deep and like 24 feet long. And they had power output set up, but it was pretty much on the dirt. They had laid out some plastic covering, some hard plastic panels. So
to kind of really quickly interrupt, I know that you guys are actually like well known for your completely dope pit.
Yes.
The trek over, and how'd that fare in the dirt?
Well, we never pulled it out onto the field. We immediately knew this was never happening. It would have taken up all of our pit space essentially that we needed to store 4 robots in.
Yeah.
And 1678 was in a similar situation. So they backed the trucks down a massive ramp and into the arena. And they were going to unload everything on lift gates, but there was no room for us to pull the pits out. So, and this is, this was after, they expected us to go out and do vision calibration at about 2:30, essentially 30 minutes after we got
Wow.
there. A pair of red bump and no driver station, no batteries or anything. So to come, luckily, got there in time, and we were able to go out and get prepared to play. And then we had a couple of our other mentors in the background they actually took the at a truck ramp, and then they brought them down a massive elevator, and that's where they set them up. So luckily nothing broke. If anything had gone horribly on a robot, would have been a struggle to fix it in time. But I picked up. So things might have frozen for me here.
Yeah, we can hear you. You're still here, but we had a little robotronic there, but you're good. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting story. I mean, it's unfortunately aligns with kind of what I had heard. Unfortunately, now a lot of people, especially in chat, and a lot of us in the stands, were wondering what was up with the audio, with not the audio, with the sun. So obviously there was a solar delay. Was it actually a solar delay? Did they just say, okay, we're going to delay everything, or what?
Yeah, actually in one of the matches where, clouds wasn't that bad. We were on the blue line side, which had the biggest sun glare. And about halfway through the match, the sun's peeked through the clouds, and all of a sudden you couldn't really see most of the other half of the field. So we kind of finished the match with this glare coming through, and then went off the field. And that's when they had that, I think it felt like 2 hours or something in between each match. It was a little less than that, but you're waiting. But just even before that, you walk inside and you go, okay, this is a shooter game. And our vision was not going to work at all. We were running Pixie, and on the field, and luckily we had Dead Reckon tuned in from the very beginning. So we didn't actually have to tune it. It just luckily worked out on the blue line side a lot better than the red alliance.
Okay, well that's actually really lucky, I guess, that it worked out for you in that way.
Yeah, I was lucky. And our part of our aiming process too is we had a flashlight, and we weren't doing any fancy vision that would tell us what distance we were away and change RPM. We had a flashlight set at one distance, and we would just use it. But in those earlier matches, we couldn't even see the flashlight because you're playing in daylight.
Right.
So a couple of those, like Einstein match 2 and 4, was all just my driver Dead Reckoning where he was on the field, lining up, shooting a couple, correcting a little bit, and then letting the rest go.
Oh, so you actually did a couple of pre-shots before you actually sent out your full volley?
Yeah, he has a pretty good idea of where the robot needs to be on the field, and he was able to get into that position quickly, shoot a couple shots, see did they go in, were they overshooting a little bit, adjust, and then just let the rest go. Whatever we missed, we missed. We always know that we made enough that he could finish up, play the rest of the match.
Cool. All right, so I want to show a match video. We're going to show up Einstein match number 15, which I think up until we saw the finals of 254 at St. Louis are probably the best match of the year, I'll say. This is on Einstein. This is basically, I'm calling it Final Match 0. It was a great showing by both alliances here. So going into this, after the match was over and you saw how close it was, what was going through your mind and the minds of your teammates and your alliance partners, seeing how you guys managed to just barely squeak out a victory there?
Well,
I think they actually lost, didn't they?
We lost. Yeah, we lost it by yeah. And I think this was one of those matches where 1678 Alliance realizes that we probably have a better chance of beating them, and if we score enough points, we're guaranteed to make it into finals at this point. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really know ahead of time what we were going to hit going in there. I was prepared for a defensive match where they're trying to make us lose, but I also thought that they would rather play us than the 2122 and 987 Alliance. I think the double shooter alliances were a little overhyped. So I thought, okay, we were just going to go out, score as much as we can, make it into finals. That was the milestone, because it had been a roller coaster just to get to Einstein finals with the replay and matches going one way or the other. 22 Alliance losing, the 1678 Alliance losing. So there were a lot of up downs. We were in, we were out, we're in, we're out. And then this match comes around, and we just play it clean. And at the conclusion of the match, realizing how close we were, seeing how some mistakes on our lines had happened, I knew that adding a little bit of defense. I mean, we were done with the 4-rotor at like 45 seconds.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much, all right, wait and hang. I mean, we engaged. Our hang was only about 5 seconds, and we engaged on the rope at like 30 seconds to spare. We had just shot, all right, hit the 40 kPa, and then we're like, okay, let's hang, end of the match, see what happens. And while we were doing that, they were finishing shooting, and that's when 1678, the camera just cut away, but where they're about to shoot, I think those were the points that made the difference in the win or loss. So coming out of that match, I knew that throwing a little bit of defense, bring in the kind of secret weapon that we had with, I'd drawn on our match strategy sheet, all right, guys, we're going to finish the 4-rotor, 29-28, you're going to come over and block us, like protect us from anyone trying to stop us from shooting or trap anyone who came over to play defense on us. And as soon as this match ended, we hadn't run that strategy. I knew that, we had a shot at least, a pretty good chance of mixing a little bit of defense, play to really win the match, and I thought we had a pretty good shot at beating them at least one of the 3 times.
Yes. I assume going into the match, you guys had you had done the math to see what you needed to hit points wise to guarantee you were making it in. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you knew when that match ended, I mean, even before it ended, that you were going to finals.
Yeah, we knew we were good at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I guess the last thing to talk about before we kind of wrap up Houston a little bit is your experience in the finals there. So we've already talked about it a little bit already, and how basically you think that your position allowed you to shoot more accurately due to like the effects on the field. But I will be honest. When I saw that match, I was so entertained and so happy to see that you guys were basically outscoring 2 of the great shooters in FRC and probably one of the best.
I mean, when we came back from Sacramento, having just played with 6078, we had decided robot's decent, but where we're going to improve is make our robot more accurate so that when we shoot an auto, we're hitting above 30, get us as far ahead as we can. So all we focused on was, all right, let's make the shooter great. And we were doing test trials because we were running a foam hood at that point. And we did about 6,000 shots to see if the foam would wear and had an average accuracy of 90%, which I knew operationally was going to be about 80%. So then in that match, going off with the batch 15 that we had just played, I knew 10-11 and 29-28 were going to hit the 4-rotor almost on their own, with us maybe scoring 2 to 3 gears. So I knew I could afford to run a gear cycle, pick up balls off the field, which 118 does a huge favor, hitting the hoppers on the ground, so that we could just intake while we drove around.
Yep. And
on our next gear cycle back, line up, shoot again, and then go for another gear, go for more balls. So we were able to shoot twice in that match, the first one. The first one we were uncontested because the Newton Alliance was running for the 4-rotor. It's a game of sprint for the 4-rotor, and then decide what you're doing after that. So we were able to shoot uncontested, and I think we were above 40 kPa at that point. I mean, we came out of auto with I think like 38 or 39. Yeah. I was really happy being on the blue side. As I've said before, that boiler and our auto it worked over there. Yeah. I think, had we been on the Red Alliance side, our auto would not have been nearly as good. So then, here we come to the end of the match, 10-11, 29-28. They finished the 4-rotor. I don't remember what time it was, but it was near about 40 seconds. And then now you have us with a fully loaded hopper, scoring our last gear, getting ready to shoot. And 10-11 is now able to go get in the way of both 1678 and 118, coming to and from the feeder station. And then 29-28 was able to come over, and they saw 4188 chase us back in, and they were going to come and push us out of the key. And then I actually didn't see them die during the match. I just saw us get pushed back, and then the match started to wind down, and we were at about 30 seconds, and we hadn't finished our shot volley. And 29-28 was doing a great job of slowing them down, getting back. And then we were able to shoot and hang. And I just didn't, looking down the field while you're coaching, I just didn't see as many balls being shot by the Red Alliance side. I think they were slowed down enough by 10-11 and 29-28 that they were stressing about hitting the 4-rotor and just having enough time to hang.
Yeah, it was some crazy matches for sure. It's really cool to hear your analysis of the situation. I as somebody who hasn't coached this year, I guess I would never have thought that you couldn't quite see what was going on necessarily on the other side of the field. I mean, it makes a ton of sense that you can't see with the airships there, but I as a spectator on these matches, especially Einstein, I always kind of have a feel how everything's going all the time. So it's interesting to see that you're kind of in a bit of a fog of war almost.
Yeah.
Well, I think
go ahead.
So I mean, as a spectator of many Einsteins in the past, I'm not really a fan of ones that are determined hugely by penalties. And that second match, from where I was, I didn't even know that 4188 had died in our human feeder zone. We were always grabbing from the back, and they had kind of blocked off the front one where 10-11 was grabbing from. So in combination of that match, we were just going for it. And then I think where we were, like, the airship just blocked what we could see. So I thought we were going to lose that match just by, they ran a really good strategy. Was they kind of stopped us, slowed us down early enough in the match that when we were worried and sprinting for the last couple gears for our 4-rotor, they trapped us back on their side. They essentially pulled the same strategy against us. And I thought we were, the depth perception was pretty hard on that field. When you see a robot hanging, you just can't quite tell how far yours is away. And I thought we had actually touched 4188 while they were hanging, but my driver had actually waited for them to hang and then drove underneath them with like a half inch to clear to sprint back for the, it was crazy to see it in the moment, but they drove under them with just barely enough room to clear to come back and hang in time.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I got to echo your sentiments. I think it's unfortunate that the match was decided by penalties, and it's even worse when it's because a robot died in a loading zone like that. But I mean, it's at the same time, it's kind of one of those things that it's nothing certainly you can do about it. You just got to play your game the best you can and hope that they can come back from it and do just as well.
Yeah.
So cool. Well. I guess before we kind of wrap up Houston, does anybody else have any last things they want to talk about or anything you want to add into the conversation, Jack?
I think Einstein for Houston really rushed. The delay really set them back. Once the match ended, they told us, okay, get the robots off the field, go back to the pit. And that's when we thought they were going to be doing the award ceremony, but then all the lights came off and the big fireworks show went off. Which it was a lot of fireworks. It was 3 coordinated songs long worth of them. Yeah. But we were all celebrating and stuff, and then we really rushed getting out of there. So we didn't actually we got to get individual pics, but they were rushing us out the door. We didn't get a chance to do an alliance picture or anything, which a little bit disappointed about that.
That's too bad.
But I think we lucked out being on the field because I know the stands and the situation for our team and all the teams going in there. It was a pretty trying day for them.
Yeah, I think that's I will agree with you. I think it's if people who are watching the show don't know, just go to Read Chief Delphi or the subreddit if you dare. There's more than enough about what happened there. We don't need to retread that territory. But gosh, I was lucky that I had a pass that let me get in the back door. But if I had to wait outside for 2 hours, I'd be really, really upset.
Yeah, we had people from our team that just went home and watched it online.
Yeah.
Because they weren't. I mean, so we had a number of parents that we had a van that we took from our hotel, which was kind of on the other side of downtown and about a mile or so away. And so we loaded everything up into the van and they drove it back, and they were going to come back and watch. And we just said, just stay back at the hotel. It's not worth driving back here, trying to find a place to park, pay for parking, and then stand in line for like 4 hours in the heat to try and get into the venue.
Yeah.
And especially being in there already and seeing the kind of visibility that we had of the field, it was rough. And I'm hoping that that was just kind of a first year, logistics. Everything's not quite what you think it's going to be, and everybody's scrambling to make it work. And that in future years, they'll have that a little bit more planned out. I don't really know what to do about the visibility thing, although I think some better camera work on the Jumbotron could really help with that. But I think trying is a word for it. It was rough.
Matt, this is the first Einstein you've seen in person in 10 years as well, right? This is the first you've been to 2006?
Oh, I'm sorry. The last time I was at championships was in Atlanta in 2005. And the convention center, in my opinion, was awesome. Overall, I thought the venue itself was pretty chill. Kids were hanging out, eating lunch on the carpet of the whole convention center and having a good time, and everything was smooth there. I was really impressed with that. Yes, there were issues at Minute Maid Park and those sorts of things, and I'm in agreement with Evan that I hope that was just a first year trial thing, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt on that. It was pretty neat from a viewer's perspective for not seeing it in 10 years, that like Einstein round robin match 15, where it was almost a preview of the finals matches, all of a sudden after all of the trying afternoon and evening hours, and we watched that match and go, holy crap. And to actually see the game strategy come out in that, it was worth the wait. Yeah. And to see the back and forth, and to see how Fuel all of a sudden is making major differences and all of that sort of thing, it was cool to watch. So it was worth the wait. Yes, it was tough to get to that point, but it was well worth it.
Yeah. But that all being said, let's not hopefully your team is not too bummed because of that experience, that you guys are ready for the Festival of Champions in a few weeks or a few months, right? So now let's talk a little bit about St. Louis. St. Louis back, the St. Louis Championship again presented by Qualcomm, back at the Dome at the America Center, formerly the Edward Jones Dome, before the Rams decided to vacate the premises. So again, I was there, and Clinton was there, and Kevin was there, and Kevin and Clinton, you guys competed. So Clinton, tell me a little bit about your team's experience at St. Louis. Was it on par with what you expected? Did everything go as you'd hoped it would?
We'll say it goes as usually is planned, I guess. This is going to sound like a cocky Michigander. Basically, when we go to MSC, the level of competition is very high. At MSC, we didn't have to worry about our partners not having the ability to climb. With St. Louis, it was kind of like we took a step back. We had to be concerned about it, and some matches were decided by climb roulette. Whoever gets the climb, they win the match, right? But other than that, the venue was good, per usual. It felt a little roomier because we didn't have 8 divisions, right? So the pits and everything were more wide open. Walking to the field, even being down by the field, it wasn't as bad as previous years. But other than that, the event went smooth because we've been doing it since 2011 in that arena.
Cool. So Kevin, you guys have been to St. Louis for every single year that it's been around since the championship's been there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience and how I know that your team especially had a bit of a rough time as far as win-loss tie through the elimination, the qualification round. So why don't you give us your guys' take on what St. Louis was like for you guys?
Yeah, so St. Louis, I've only gone to St. Louis since 2014, but this was an absolutely awesome time in terms of match scheduling. We got plenty of matches. It was nice and roomy because there's only 67 teams for each division. They didn't have a lot of the Lego League teams, so there was just tons of room everywhere. Queuing was really nice. So all that was the best I've ever experienced at St. Louis. For quals matches, it was very up and down. Our first day went awesome. We got 3-4 IP matches right off the bat, and then ended up losing our last one, though, in a very, very tough match that we didn't really expect to win, and ended up not working out. It was very close. It came down to a tech foul, but it was a very close match. And then day 2 hits. That's where the weird schedule came in. On day 1, we only played 4 matches. I think a lot of teams had the same thing. You only play 4 on the first day, and then you play 6 on the second day. And that day was super long, and everything that could go wrong for us ended up going wrong. It was just miserable on our end. We had bad strategy in some matches where we either overestimated our own capabilities and didn't quite get enough gears, didn't quite shoot enough, and left us no time for stuff. Overall, it was very rough, but ended up working out. The schedule gave us like a 4-hour long break, so we were able to hit the practice field, get some of our issues resolved for our final matches, and those went fairly smoothly. Teams started playing a lot of defense against us in quals, which is something we weren't really expecting. We knew in the matches we were going against good gear robots, we'd expect defense, but in some of the matches where they were totally outgunned and we knew they're outgunned, they played defense the entire match, which was kind of strange for us.
Yeah, that is a little bit weird. I mean, sometimes teams get into a weird situation where they figure that the only way they can win is if they just stop this one team, not really understanding how they can actually win the match beside not losing to that one team. But so I kind of want to touch on, though, probably one of the coolest matches we've seen all year, which is when you and your alliance, your eventual alliance captain, ended up scoring 101 KPA in qualification match number 22. So were you guys planning, I guess, before the match to have this be like shoot a boatload of balls, or did it just end up that way because of how the match flowed?
It ended up just happening that way. We certainly did not expect to score 100 KPA. We knew 2767 before the event was a great shooter. We knew 3618 was a good gear runner. So we had a good feeling that we'd have plenty of time for both us and 2767 to shoot. We just didn't really expect it to end up the way it did because of a robot dying on the opposing alliance. So like 2767 is easily the best driven robot in all of FRC this year, and they have to be the fastest robot at getting from point A to point B with their swerve drive. And with only 2 robots on their alliance running, our robots staying out of their way. That was one of our goals of the match, was make sure 3618 and 254 just stayed clear of 2767. And they just ran gears like crazy. So we just had all match to gather balls and just shoot. It was you can see them at the end of the match coming up. Like they go and they shoot all their balls. They go and dump the hoppers, fill up their hopper completely, come back, shoot all their balls, go to the far hopper, dump that, shoot all those balls, and they still make it with plenty of time to climb. And it's just, I mean, that was just an awesome team to play with. And yeah, it was pretty fortunate for that a robot died. That was probably the reason this match happened that way. But
yeah,
it was a lot of fun just to see how much fuel we could actually score.
I was going to say, was there a point at which you guys said, like, we've got the match, let's just see if we can hit 100?
Not so much. We was more like, let's try to score as much fuel as we can. I thought we'd peak somewhere around 90. So it was very nice when we were watching it tick up as we were going to our climb, and it's just like, oh, it's getting close to 100, and then 100.
Oops.
That's really cool.
Well, it's a happy.
It's kind of interesting with the lag in the scoring system with the boiler counter that like you stop scoring, you don't actually necessarily know how much you've scored. You just know at least how much you've scored.
Yeah, it's especially true with our robot because I'm relatively tuned to our SVR and San Francisco shooting where we were not very accurate. We could, for those regionals, we probably dumped maybe 10 to 15 kPa per full hopper, maybe like 18 if we were lucky.
Yeah.
And this was only our second match on the new shooter, which improved our accuracy by like 20%. So we went from the 15 kPa to 25 to 30 kPa dumps, which is something I was totally not used to because, I mean, there's no way to practice that. You can't do that at home where it was completely unreasonable to like, all right, we shot a full hopper, some kid go count the balls. All right, that's how much kPa we scored. That's just so much time for something. So it was kind of learning on the fly of what our robot was actually capable of. And that was the match that we finally got a good feel for what our robot could do because we just shot so much.
So, like you were saying, in the later part of the day, you met a lot of defense. You ended up losing a few matches. Ended up not with the number 1 seed. Where I think you guys still ended up ranking really high. I think you were
second.
You guys second. Yeah, you were second, right? So you could have turned down your alliance. You could have turned down the invitation for the 1 seed. Was there ever a point in your mind or your team's mind where you thought about doing that and sort of building your own alliance?
No, like entering the event. We knew there was a bunch of teams on our radar that we thought were robots we wanted to play with. 2767 was definitely already one of them, and they're the one that we saw had the highest potential, but they had some weird issues at MSC. When we went and talked to them, they told us what the issues were and how they had some issues with the electronics and the fact that the field had a lot of electrostatic discharge. So they said they just swapped everything out and they should be good to go. And then we saw them on a practice match that Wednesday and we're just like, all right, they look really, really good. And we had a practice match with like 340. They also looked really good. And there's a lot of good robots, but after the end of the first day, I don't think there was any question for any of us that 2767 was the robot we wanted to play with the most.
Very cool. All right.
So realistically, I mean, you know, once you know that and going into the last couple matches where you know, it's either you guys or 2767 that's going to have the number 1 seed. You know, there's no real question in there. I assume that they had also expressed interest, or you guys kind of knew that if they were number 1, they were probably picking you.
We were hoping, based on how badly some of our matches went, where we were definitely struggling pretty hard. We were hoping they would see past that, and they did. I think they knew that whatever issues we were having was stuff we can get over in a limbs and ended up being true. So we were very happy that they picked us because that was the robot we loved the most and that we were able to quash any doubts they had.
Nice. So after getting picked, you went through the elimination rounds. Now, you guys, your field had sprung a little bit of a leak actually at one point. Did you ever have to play? I assume you did have to play on the field when the roof, if people weren't aware, there was a leak in the roof over Daily that they had to put up a tarp between the player station and the airship to sort of trap the water. Did that ever like interfere with anything that you guys were doing? Did you ever worry about like water falling, or did your driver station or robot ever get wet or anything like that?
We were very lucky with that. So it rained. The leak came through pretty good by the blue on the red side feeder station by the blue airship. The leak started right after our second quarterfinal match, and they stopped it for like 10 to 15 minutes to just get it kind of dry, and then they played one match, and then the leak really started going. That's when they had to put the tarp up. For those matches, the carpet was definitely damp. Not sure if it affected those robots, but I think it would have affected us in 2767 because like our base plate has the diamond cut holes. We have a floor scraping wedge. Like water probably would have been spraying a lot. But by the time we got back on the field, it was totally dry because it went through all the rest of the quarters, and it was a lot of time between when we last played and when we actually got to go back onto the field.
Oh, so for those of you didn't see it, here's a picture up right now of what Daly looked like at one point. Not to harp too much on this because we got a lot to talk about, but can I ask how much water was coming in there?
I didn't actually get to see the stream, but Corey from 2767 knew a bunch of the people that were playing because tons of Michigan teams were in our division, so you got to go talk to them. And I'm not sure how much it was dripping, but it was a large area was very, very wet.
I actually heard at one point there was a volunteer holding an umbrella over top of the drivers.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's not a good look. But I guess once the Rams leave, probably not too much reason to be checking the roof too often. But
yeah. I've read some rumors online. Was there ever talk of moving everyone to a different field because of it?
No one talked to us about that.
That probably didn't make it past the volunteer coordinator level since they didn't actually do it. Was there ever any concern of playing under, like driving under the tarp and having it just fall down and get water in your robot?
No, not so much. It was tied pretty securely with an Ethernet cable up to the rotor.
You got a lot of bits up to hold it down.
Yeah, our alliance wasn't too worried about it because it was on the blue side. Mm-hmm. We were pretty sure 2767 was, if that was for some reason on the red side, or if we weren't the number 1 seed and we had to play on blue, there was concerns that 2767 would be shooting into the tarp. Because one of their spots is pretty much directly under there, and they have a nice high arc.
Oh yeah.
So, luckily, all the shooters for the most part on the other side shot just direct. Like I think 27 was the farthest shooter of the blue line sides, and they shot from pretty much just outside the tarp. So they were not interfered too much, I hope.
Well, that's probably something that I would never have guessed I would see at a first field, is someone tying up a tarp with an Ethernet cable. That's for sure. But so I guess we'll kind of just sort of, if you don't mind, kind of gloss over the eliminations on your field, because you guys managed to win all those matches in 2 without too much of a difficulty. Although you didn't get 4 rotors a few times, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Yeah. So our semifinals and quarterfinals matches played out relatively the same. We went against 2 great gear alliances that could not shoot fuel. They played hard defense, but we were just able to get 4 rotors, and then we already had our 40 KPA pretty much out of auto due to the fact that us and 2767 shot. So those matches were very difficult, just because we were trying to get used to the flow with both our robots, and then we were just, us and 2767 especially, were getting just absolutely hammered by defense. Yeah. That was fine. We get to finals. That was a very tough matchup because it was against 2 robots that could shoot 40 KPA on their own if they spent the whole match doing it. And then they were able to hit 40 KPA together pretty easily. And they're both good gear runners. 27 and 4976 were both some of the best gear robots and also able to chip in the fuel. And then they got a great robot in 4678 who absolutely just hammered us in the first match on defense. And someone hit 2767 so hard that their gear went into their ball hopper, which was the first time it ever happened to them. So they were stuck playing defense for the whole match, and then they shot a couple balls at the end. But it was a really good adaptation. Like 2767, like for something that had never happened to them, they immediately knew what went wrong, and they adjusted real fine, and they were playing shutdown defense with their swerve drive. And they have 775 pros, and so they can't push super hard, but they just play great positional D, and it was awesome to see. Second match was obviously a lot harder because 4678 was playing really, really strong defense again, and I think 2767 blew their main breaker or something like that.
They shut off.
Yeah, because they died, and luckily they died in a good spot. They died in our loading zone, not in the opponent, so they were safe in the corner. And we got very fortunate that they were unable to just hit the 4 rotors during the whole match. We got pretty lucky there because that was an alliance that could have easily did it. I'm not really sure why they couldn't, but that's how it played out, and we were able to win despite being down a robot and a climb.
So as you went into the finals and as you kind of went into Einstein too, you guys ended up playing PASCAC 1676 more. What kind of led you guys to make that decision?
So the first time we played 1676 was because 862 suffered a really hard hit and broke one of their drive gearboxes.
Ooh.
They were working really hard on getting it back together, and they were pretty close. But I mean, 1676 was a really good robot, so it was much easier to say we'll put them in because we weren't losing too much compared to 862, and they were just ready to go. I mean, it's a really tough position from being like they were on the sidelines, they were there for our match strategy, and then just to be asked like, "Hey guys, like we need you to go in right now and play finals 2." And they went out there and killed it. It led to a little bit of adaptation. So one of the ways we formed our alliance was we really wanted 2-rotor auto. That was the whole reason we picked the robots in 862 and 1676. Yep. 862 is really good at side gear auto, and 1676 is really good at middle. So depending on which robot was in, that affected where 2767 goes. And so we were totally fine putting 1676 in. And then
I don't recall exactly, but did that mean that 2767 did not shoot when they were doing their side gear?
Yeah, so when they did
their fuel.
Yeah. When they did feeder side, they put the gear on and then they just book it down the field. So they start pretty much at the retrieval zone.
Cool. So kind of pivoting over to the Einstein matches, to keep on this topic a little bit, you guys did play 862 sometimes, and also you played 1676 there. Did 862 have another failure, or was it more of a strategy thing to put in PASCAC for the last few matches?
It was more of a strategy thing. 862 was running pretty great on our daily limbs, but then their auto, I think in one of the hits, whatever sensor they used to detect the side just wasn't working as well anymore, and they actually missed side gear, something they were 90% at during their quals. They started missing, and they missed 3 in a row. So with how the robots we were playing against at Einstein, we knew we had to get our best shot for 2-rotor, so that involved subbing them out, unfortunately. But 1676 came in, hit their great middle gear auto, and 2767 never missed on the side.
Cool. So it's kind of interesting to see how the two championships actually parallel each other. So we have Einstein match number 15 here from St. Louis up on the screen. This is also kind of was a preview of the finals, and also a fantastic match that was super duper close, decided by only a couple of points. Basically, who came down to who shot last. So I really would like to talk about that a little bit, because that was kind of the hallmark of this series in the finals between you guys. How did you guys? What was your strategy as far as like making sure you had the most balls and you had the last call when it came to balls? Did you basically just push it as hard as you could and shoot as fast as you can, or was there any real plan as what you guys were doing?
We did change up one thing going into those. Originally, we were just running gears until we got close, and then we would be the first robot to stop running gears and to start shooting, because we always picking up balls during the match. We made one change that our robot would stop hard at 2 gears, let 1676 and 2767 just pick up whatever remaining gears are left, and we would go to shoot. In order to guarantee balls, we were unsuccessful in the first the round robin match, which is trying to pop all the hoppers. That was something that a lot of the strategy mentors on 254 were emphasizing, and we had a momentary lapse, which led to 1986 getting a free hopper. And if you give them a free hopper, they just make the entire thing. So that was pretty unfortunate. But yeah, we didn't really try to do anything to guarantee being the final shooter. We just knew that if we picked up balls the entire match, we'd have more balls than anyone else, because our hopper was twice as big as everyone else's, and we could make it up at the end.
Wow.
I think the interesting difference here, right, in Houston, the two alliances playing it knew that if both of them hit a minimum score, it didn't matter who won. They were both playing in finals. In this match, it was do or die for Titanium's alliance because they already had 2 losses. So if they lose it, they drop to 3 losses, and I think it would have been 254 and Strikeforce's alliance against 2056 OP Robotics. Whereas on the flip side, Cheesy Poofs with only 1 loss just had to hit a minimum score of, I don't know, it was something super low, like 400, super low, quote unquote, right? But something that they were easily capable of doing, and they'd have the tiebreaker even if they lost the match to guarantee finals. So a little bit of a different dynamic going into that match where it was a must-win for one of the alliances as opposed to not for either.
Yeah. And so equally as much on the final matches were basically kind of the same deal. As far as the last final match, at least, it basically came down to the last few balls in the goal. So if my memory serves correct, let's put up final match number 2 here. Take a look at it. If my memory serves correct, I think you guys ended up hanging before Titanium's alliance, but you ended up with more balls than Titanium shot at the end. Is that correct? If my memory serves me correct.
I think Titanium hung first.
Oh, they did hang first. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
And the big difference in this match was the 2 rotors, right? Cheesy Poofs didn't 2-rotor auto. Yeah, Cheesy Poofs didn't actually need to exceed them on fuel. They just needed to get within 20.
Yeah. So what was going through your mind as you were making those last few shots? What kind of made you like? What made you pick when to hang? Was it just sort of like a feeling? Did you just have to kind of to go with your gut feel as to when you wanted to switch off and stop shooting, or was there any like, I don't know, was there any spidey senses you had tingling or something?
For us, had a pretty good feeling we had enough fuel in our robot to catch up to them. We knew since we hit 2-rotor and they didn't, that all we had to do was be within 20 points. It was a little bit weird because we picked up a 5-point foul right at the beginning of the match, which then now we have to outshoot 25. But just so happens that 33-10, when they're playing defense on us, also picked up the same 5-point foul that we did earlier. So we got pretty lucky with that regard. But yeah, I think us, Corey from 2767 and us just had a pretty good feeling we had enough balls. It wasn't really any science behind it. We just knew how many balls we had in our robots and what our robots were capable of. And once I saw we were close and it was counting up, I knew we could just go get the hang, which is something we were a little bit worried about with alignment because in finals match 1, our hang had an extremely unusual failure where our Velcro like completely burnt through and we just unraveled. Our ratchet was still fine and just our rope unraveled while we were up there.
Oh man.
So our hanger had a nice dead spot, 1 rope wide in the middle of it. So I knew we wanted to leave a little bit more time than normal for hanging because our driver's used to lining up in that one spot. He was pretty good at hitting the one spot in our drum, and now he had to hit it slightly differently and hope that we didn't hit the same failure again.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, that's awesome. That's one of those stories you don't ever hear. That's really cool. So I guess that's probably all we have to say about Einstein and St. Louis. Do you have anything else you want to say about your matches and your eventual world championship victory there?
Not too much. I mean, we got really lucky in our run, like in the round robin. When we played against Tesla, who is one of the gear only within Team Dave's the low boiler tiebreaker. We got extremely lucky that one of the robots' batteries flew out, and we were able to get a lot of points back in that match. And Tesla was one of the toughest alliances in terms of they had a fairly unique strategy from what I've seen from other gear alliances. Is in addition to playing the normal, whenever we're near a robot, we're going to harass you, and then we're going to move on and get our gear. They would store the final 3 gears in all the 3 of their robots and then start playing defense, and then count on the fact that they're so good at gears that they will not only get back to climb, they'll get back to score all 3 gears, spin all the rotors, and still get their climbs. So we got pretty lucky dodging the Tesla alliance there with one of their robots dying.
Yeah. Well, cool. So the last thing I want to talk about before we move on really quick to the Festival of Champions is especially like Jack or Matt or Clint. Do you guys have any? This is the last championship at St. Louis. Do you guys have any memories of St. Louis that you want to bring up before we wave goodbye to the city basically forever at this point?
I'm going to miss it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It was to me being a student, when I was a student on the team and having all of my student years be in that big dome, just being able to, for I think 2013, 2012, in 2015, being able to be up in the stands, looking down, just seeing how many people were there watching it was quite the experience for me. And then 2014, we got to sit down in the Einstein seating because we'd made it. Back when I think the actual show of first was the matches, and in 2014 was one of the first years they started doing the actual game announcing a little more officially.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed that. And those are seeing some of the matches that we still talk about today, like 2013 Einstein Finals, 2014 Einstein Finals. Just the powerhouse alliances of the best robots in first coming together, which is probably the thing I'm going to miss most is having these, the North and South teams, even though it's East and West, but being able to get together for the first time that they may have ever played with each other and then have a solid shot at winning the championship. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed all of that aspect to it.
Yeah.
And St. Louis, I just enjoy that city. Great barbecue, and great barbecue closer to the event than we had in Houston.
My one regret from my most recent trip is I did not get to Pappy's, but I did go to Sugar Fire, which is pretty okay. It was decent. It was tasty. Anybody else have any memories they want to talk about from either their time in St. Louis or some of the matches we saw there before we move on?
One thing I'll say is I'll compliment first on this. Saturday morning, it was raining really bad, and they actually opened up the doors early, which was really awesome of them. We didn't think we were going to get in till time opens, and I think got in 15 to 20 minutes early. I think they just said, "Hey, just come on in. It's the last day. If you're already here, you're already been waiting in the rain anyway." So I thought that was really cool. First, to iterate on some of the other comments that other people have said, it's sad to say that there's some teams that we might never be able to get to see again or play again with that we have in the past because of the division of the two champs. So that's kind of almost putting an end to an era by having this be the last one.
I'm curious if we're ever gonna go back to a dome again, right? And Clint, correct me if I'm wrong, but Detroit is going to be like Houston, right? It's going to be sort of a convention center style.
And their baseball, the Detroit baseball park's even farther away than Minute Maid Stadium was from our convention center.
And let's just say you can't walk down the street necessarily anytime you want in April because there might be snow on the ground still. So, that's another factor. Houston and Michigan, totally different weather climates.
Yeah. But I know, having been in Atlanta every year since 2006 to 2010, and then St. Louis from then on. I didn't get to go this year to St. Louis. I was only able to make it to Houston, and I'm sad that we might not get a dome back, and even if First eventually decides to, bring all the championship back to one event as sort of a finale type thing, we might not be in a dome again just because they're hard to find that suit our needs. So
the Detroit event is supposed to be at Ford Field. It's not supposed to be at Tiger Stadium. It would be impossible to have that Tiger Stadium. There's no roof over it. It is a completely outside stadium. So that's impossible, like I said, in Michigan. So it's supposed to be at Ford Field. The normal qualification matches are supposed to be at Cobo, which, like has been said, it's not anywhere close. It is not, it is a couple miles away. It's not walking distance. It's not blocks.
Well, that's next year's thought, I guess. Did you want to
welcome to
about St. Louis, though? Yeah.
Well, I'm with Clint on that. It's kind of marking the end of another era for First. A lot of things happened in St. Louis, good, bad, and ugly, and there'll be a lot of history talks with what's gone down there. But I can remember back to Disney with First, and it was a big deal that First switched from a tent style. Pits are underneath massive tents. Divisions are under massive tents. Alliances of two. And that was a major change for First to then do a dome style arena. And now it's because we've grown again and First has changed to 2 champs now instead of 1. There's just not facilities that are able to house us again. So it's an end to an era, and it'll be interesting to see what the stories of good, bad, and ugly from St. Louis of how things will change now again in the future. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's a perspective I hadn't seen, actually. I totally forgot that we haven't been in a dome forever. It's only been 15 years, but still, even then, it's not been the whole history of First. So, all right. So I think let's talk a little bit about the Festival of Champions. So Kevin and Jack, your teams have both qualified for that by winning their World Championships. Woohoo! Congratulations. Really quick, I'm guessing you guys haven't heard any more information about it than we have. Is that right?
Yeah. We're still waiting to hear back from First. It's going to be an expensive trip. First hasn't told us what they're going to help us with to get there. And I'm hoping we do get some support from them because I'd hate to make the call of being I'd love to go play at the Festival of Champions, and I hope we get to, but we have to fundraise for next season too.
Right.
And it could be $1,000 a kid, especially for the West Coast teams having to make the trip out there.
Right.
Looking at flights already, it's at least $500 a ticket, and that's just the start.
Really, flying into Boston or Manchester?
Probably flying into Boston. I think I can't remember.
Oof. Okay, that's not good.
Yeah. Tickets are expensive, Francis.
Well, I know
you do Chesney Champs.
Yeah, it's like whatever. It's okay, but yes.
Right, but this is middle of July or end of July.
That's true. So, Kevin, do you guys think you're going to make it to the Festival of Champions?
Yeah, we hope to. Again, money is the primary factor here. All the West Coast teams, I think, are the most worried about this, and I think same with the Michigan teams. But it's quite an ordeal. We'd love to bring the normal group of kids we do, but that's a lot of people. It's the middle of summer, so not everyone's actually in town.
Yep.
Or they're doing summer programs, so it's pretty tough to squeeze in, even though it should be a dead time for kids. But a lot of kids are busy, so we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I guess the one saving grace is you've got a couple of months to think it through and plan it out. So it's not like you're going from district championship to the world championship in a week. But I wish you guys the best, and I hope to see you guys in my hometown of Manchester in a couple of months. That'll be awesome. So let's move on to our next topic really quick and talk about the curtain call of Steamworks. So except for the Festival of Champions and the other 100 events that are happening between now and November, we're done with Steamworks for the official season. So I kind of just want to get everybody's take on the game. So let's start with Kevin. What are your thoughts on the game as a whole?
The game really grew on me. I did not like it for build season because it was one of the hardest challenges and the most frustrating challenge. You're trying to shoot a lot of balls very quickly. They're not similar to pass balls. Had to change up a lot of our build process, and wasn't a fan at the beginning, but the way it shaped up, especially by champs and district champs, the game was really fun to watch when you could see things. Not so much when you had a bad camera, but when you had an event that had good cameras, good visibility of the things you needed to see, it was a fantastic game to watch. I just wish more events had the proper cameras.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to set up. It's to plan for if you don't know what you're getting into. So Evan, what are your thoughts on Steamworks? We've seen it. We knew the name back in October.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts now?
I think it was a really good concept. I think it was a couple of minor tweaks away from being a really great game. I think it ended up being a pretty good game. And some of that's colored by coming on the heels of Stronghold, which was one of, I think, the better, more balanced games that FRC's had. And really, I think it comes down to balance. You know, there's been the debate all year of whether fuel does or doesn't matter, and climb points and playoff bonuses and all that stuff. And I think it's really hard, especially in initial design, from the game design group's perspective, to predict how easy or hard it is going to be for teams to score fuel or climb ropes, etc. But that's kind of my overall impression is when you've got two evenly matched alliances like we saw in Einstein Finals, the game can be really, really great. And when you're in the middle of qualification matches and you go through the entire qualifications and there's one match where all three of your robots climb, then the game is really, really rough. So I think ultimately that's the final verdict. I think we'll look favorably on this game, back on this game in the future. But there were definitely some rough edges.
Fair enough. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with Evan. I probably would put Steamworks in the top 5 that I've seen so far. Overall, I thought the game was really good. Being a lead teacher on a team, it was frustrating for my kids to do our game analysis in the first few days and say, we're going to completely ignore one of the major game elements, that there's 500 balls on the field and we're not going to touch them. So it was really hard for my kids to see that. But then to go to competitions and rank 6th out of 60 teams just doing that, it was neat for my kids to say, wow, we can actually analyze this and figure out what the game calls for the regions that we're in. So that was neat to see. I agree with Evan that with some minor tweaks, this could have been like a top 2 or 3 game. To the score and how things were analyzed in the actual game. But it was also neat, it was also neat to see the extra person on the drive team this year. To have the kids actually in the field and you could visibly see them doing things. I think from an audience perspective, that was a great way to include a student into the aspects of the game. So overall, I was pretty satisfied with the game. It wasn't as good as Stronghold, but it was pretty close, and it'll continue to be a good game that we'll continue to talk about.
Yeah, you actually mirror my thoughts almost exactly. That it's hard to say this game is fantastic because it came off of, my opinion, the best game ever. Read my article on blog.thebluelines.com. But my big thing is kind of like Stronghold a little bit, but maybe a little bit different. Is if you've been to championships before, you've seen a lot of robots that are like, okay, how did this robot make it to the championship? Right? Robots that can barely drive, robots that can't do any game task whatsoever. This year, even though like most people didn't do balls, on the opposite side of that, almost everybody could do gears to some degree. Some did it much better than other teams, but every robot, especially even at the championship, had some capability for gears, and that made for a much more interesting and dynamic and sort of like presentable game from first. And so I'm very happy about that. And there are flaws, and I think Clinton, I want to hear your thoughts because I think I know what words you're going to say that you don't like about this game.
What is that supposed to mean?
Well, I mean, crimes, but.
Well, I mean, I've been saying it all season. I have a love-hate relationship with this. I really love to see the fuel fly. It's exciting to see tons of fuel flying through the air going into the boilers. I hate the climb aspect of the game. It just wasn't right this season. However, I think this game is extremely similar to 2014. In the fact that your alliance has to work together perfectly in order to pull this game off and win, right? I kind of like it where the alliances have to work together, and it's not just it's not like Recycle Rush, go do your own thing in your corner, and hopefully we'll come out and win because everyone do the same thing they always do. So it's very similar to 2014 in the sense that at the beginning, it was a very slow game to watch. I remember week 1 and 2 and even 3 watching some webcasts and being like, wow, there they go with more gears back and forth. And it was only until the championships where the fuels really started to fly. And like I said, it mattered. It mattered on fuel, it mattered on gears, and even mattered on how fast your climber was in the end. But like I said, I do think there was a lot of strategy depth in this game. There was multiple ways to win this game. You could do the 4-rotor approach, the fuel approach, the defense approach, a lot of different things, which made it exciting from a drive coach standpoint, and really enjoyed it this season. Like I said, I think sometimes we're on the wrong side of climb roulette, but other than that, a few tweaks. I really like this game. I think I probably put it in my third favorite game.
Nice, very cool. Well, Jack, last but not least, I know you won a world championship, so this has got to be a good game in some respects. But your thoughts on how Steamworks panned out?
Well, I enjoyed playing the game, and I'm really liking how First for the last 2 years has made the game approachable by your top teams and your bottom tier teams. One thing I didn't like about this game was the distribution of points. The hang is like the first one where it comes into example, is having a 50-point climb that is so easy to do because of the way they wrote the rules, and that, yes, you can spool a rope onto it. You can use whatever rope you want to do, put slip knots in it, put elastic in it to make it easier. It just made it that cheesecake was something you would have to do. And just making sure other teams, climbers, had to work. I mean, we had all our excess mentors and students who weren't on scouting or pit were working a strike team, helping fix people's hangs, installing hangs on robots that showed up without them. And I wish that I think First should have made the rope just a constant. Like, you use their rope, would have made the climb more difficult. And then I think that would have matched the point value that they assigned for it more appropriately. Yeah. And then the next issue was the kind of fuel. This is by far the hardest shooting game. And even though we have the best, we really have the best equipment to meet it this year, the fact that we had to deal with throughput, a vertical goal, not just one that you could shoot through, but goal you had to shoot up and into with crazy throughput, and it was so small. It was a tiny goal to actually shoot into. All those three factors combined made it a very difficult game. And then on top of that, they then say, all right, during teleop, three balls equals 1. Yeah. That's from the beginning, made we set out 973 set out to build our robot to be a really good gear robot. And then I wasn't really working on that part of the design. So me and another mentor and a couple of the students were like, okay, let's put a shooter on the back. And we ended up the shooter working slightly better than our gear claw. So, I think this game would have been more exciting if they had just made the top of the boiler just this massive funnel that was, vertical like in Stronghold. Because then you would have had teams like us and probably 254 build full robot with shooters with expanding hoppers on either side. And it would have just been a sight to see, because now you're getting close to 30 to 60 balls a second might have been your norm. Because you have 5 to 6 lanes wide of just balls flying. And then I think, they designed in the element into the game of recirculating and being able to control the flow. And then it just never mattered. Hitting a fuel dump was as much as it mattered. It didn't matter at the point where every ball on the field has been picked up at this point. And now it's who's shot the most into what boiler, and can you get the reload or the overflow? We used the overflow maybe 3 times over the entire season. Yeah. So I think as a shooting game, it could have been made more exciting. And it was really aimed towards the lower part of the teams being able to really contribute. And the gear, it was a gear game with fuel to make the differential. And hangs had to be assumed that everyone was hitting them. Right.
No, I think you nailed it on the head right there. So I guess the next question is, would you put this as a good game, or do you think it's like a thumbs up, thumbs down? I hate to not try to put you on the spot, but
I give it a thumbs up. Okay. It was exciting. First just getting a little more, they're just trying to do more and more with their games, add more field elements to it. Certainly getting a chance to look at the field shocked me as someone who does a lot of mechanical design, just how some of the field was framed together. If you go look inside the rotors, they're running like an Anti-Mark planetary gearbox, but they're holding it by the motor. Like they have a clamp going around the motor, and the gearbox is just left to settle. So I'm pretty surprised that it held together as much as it did. But just to echo what Kevin said, like it was a hard game. It was a hard game to coach because there's a lot of points in this game where you have to decide: do I abandon what I'm doing because something's not going fast enough? Mm-hmm. It's not whether or not they do something. Is it being quick enough? Are we going to hit it in time and also nail our climbs in the end? So it's certainly one of those games that you have to start out super conservative, and then as you get more warmed up, get a better feel for it, you're able to start making calls, shooting earlier. We were lucky enough. So Adam Hurd, he and his wife had a baby this year. They're new parents, and Adam didn't come to Champs this year, but he was back at home with one of our other mentors, and he'd gone and bought like a 70-inch TV, set up a mission control, so to speak, with instant match review and stuff. So I ended up with a good idea of how much KPA we hit per cycle, and that was an advantage because okay, I have an idea for how many balls are in. I know how many I'm going to make, and you can know coming out of auto, this is how many times I need to shoot in a match. It's really a game of the more you can know while in the match and how many steps you need to take to finish your objective really aided in whether you're going to win or not.
Yeah. Nice. That's really, I like that. I like that. That's a good little analysis we got there. So with that said, goodbye Steamworks for now. We'll see you in all of our off-season events. But with that, let's wrap up the show by doing some shout-outs, the final shout-outs for the season. So Stephanie, our director, wants to shout out to the First Champ Live and the RoboSports Network crew, who we did something like 55 hours of broadcasting over the last 2 days. It was a ton of fun. She wants especially to thank Mason for making it super easy. Her and Mason were on the desk for a large portion of the weekend in St. Louis, and she wants to thank him for making it super easy and fun to talk about robots all week. So thanks, Mason. Thank you, Stephanie.
Presented by Qualcomm.
Presented by Qualcomm, yes. Stephanie Morrison, presented by Qualcomm. I want to also, from my shout out, I want to thank all the Two Champs volunteers. Frank called them out. He said there was about 100 of them, which if you think about it is kind of insane that 100 people took basically a week and a half to 2 weeks off of work. Maybe went home, maybe didn't, but flew or drove to 2 different places just to watch more robots and make a great experience for these kids. So thank you to all those volunteers. Matt, who are your shout outs?
I have 2 teams to shout out to this week. The first one is Team 6705 in Houston. We called them our rookie sensation team. They ended up on Roebling ranked number 3 and ended up picking their own alliance and making it to the semifinals. And that was just an awesome robot to watch all weekend at Houston. So a shout out to them. And also a shout out to 1511 Rolling Thunder. They are the Central New York team that made it all the way to Einstein in St. Louis. They had an awesome season. They ended up going out to Midwest and beating Titanium for the win there in Midwest. So a great shout out to them for making it all the way to Einstein and getting very close in the round robin to making it to the finals there. So those are my shout outs.
Very cool. Clint, who are your shout outs for today?
I'm going to shout out 2767 Strike Force for winning their division, taking number 1 in a very hard division. I've been saying basically since before MSC, they're probably the best team in Michigan this season. They have all the keys to success. They're a good gear runner, awesome drivers, great swerve, great shooter. They can do the 2 rotor in auto. They can shoot in auto. What more could someone ask for?
Not much more if you're the 254, that's for sure.
Exactly.
All right, Evan, who are you shouting out?
My shout out goes to the Einstein streaks that are greater than 2 years, so 3 years and up. Citrus Circuits on 5 years now, gunning for Bobcat's record of 6 years in a row. 2056, who got to Einstein for the 3rd year straight, and 987, who also got to Einstein for the 3rd year straight. So just impressive performances all around.
Very cool. All right, Jack, who do you want to shout out?
We'll first give a shout out to both 1011 and 2928, our awesome alliance partners. They both took home their first world championship wins to their states for all the teams there, as I believe.
Yep.
It was the first for Arizona, first for
Washington,
Pacific Northwest,
and the whole Pacific Northwest. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just another shout out to the Newton Alliance. It was an honor getting to play against some of our best friends in first, especially 1678. And it was great getting a chance to play against them. And once again, another thank you to 254. They opened up their practice field a ton of times this season to a lot of the teams in Silicon Valley, and to us whenever we called them. So that really helped us out a huge amount. We wouldn't have had autonomous modes without going to their practice field. So
very cool. All right, and last but not least, Kevin, who are you shouting out today?
All right, I got a pair of shout-outs. The first one is to a bunch of the students on 254, namely our design kids, Ashwin, Solomon, Joel, Quinn, and Griffin. They were extremely inexperienced at the start of the season, and they put in an absolutely crazy amount of hours to make sure our prototypes were designed, our final robot got done in a timely manner. It was awesome to see them progress from the start of the season where they really weren't sure what they were doing to the end of the season where you can give them a task, they'll redesign something, they'll come up with a solution, they'll get back to you fairly quickly. And then the second shout out is to our alliance, 2767, as Clint already said, they were an awesome alliance captain, extremely easy to work with, very one of the smartest teams that we played with all year. They knew how to play this game, and they had an incredible machine, incredible students. They were all so enthusiastic and fun to work with. 862, great team to work with. They were extremely gracious when we asked them to step out for matches. They worked so hard to get the robot back up and running after they were knocked out in the daily finals, and they're just extremely fun to work with. And then, of course, 1676, great team. That was also like their energy when they were sitting on the sidelines never faltered, and when we asked them to come in, they weren't nervous. They just handled a great deal of pressure very well, and they're always seemed like they were having a lot of fun. Even when on Einstein, like they had probably the funniest match introduction, but like before a match, you'd see other people and maybe they're getting nervous. They were just over there having a great laugh, and it was that attitude I think kind of rubbed off on the rest of us that like really helped calm everyone down that they were having such a good time the whole all of the event.
Yes, I noticed that. Normally 254 is pretty serene in the pits, or in the box. But you guys were doing the heart thing, which is pretty.
Yeah, anything to keep the drivers happy.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's super important. We had a semi-pro reference going the whole elimination round. We were getting tropical every match.
Okay, I don't know that one, I'm afraid. Well, you'll have to explain it to me at the break. But anyway, everybody, thank you guys for watching. We're going to take a very quick break because we're already going over. And we're going to answer literally just a couple of questions from the chat. So if you've got a good one, ask it literally right now, ! Q, followed by your question in the chat. And if it's better than what we've got selected already, we'll answer it. If not, too bad, so sad. But before we go, I want to thank Jack and Kevin once again for joining us. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. And congratulations to both your teams, to both your alliances, to all your mentors and students for accomplishing what may... for your teams has been a multiple feat, but in reality is like something that is extremely challenging to do, and you all should be extremely proud of your accomplishments.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, we're going to be right back in literally just like 2 or 3 minutes with the Q&A portion. So stay tuned, everybody. All right, everybody, we're back. That was a quick one. Again, if you've got questions, type ! Q followed by your question in the chat. If we like it, we'll answer it. But first, before we do that, presented by Team 973, Jack, you want to talk to us about some dope shirts?
Yeah, so in classic fashion that we first did with 254 in 2011 and other teams have done since, I don't know if we're the first to do it, but we will be having the Houston Winning Alliance shirts going out. and they'll be on our team store, and I assume 254 is probably going to be doing the same kind of thing. So if you guys, for viewers out there want to get on the hype train of North versus South, come on over to our team store. You'll find on our website and pick up some of our Alliance shirts.
North versus South, West versus West,
Yeah.
West versus West.
West versus slightly north from the West. What's your team's website if people don't know?
Oh, it's graybots.com.
Okay, cool.
Super easy to find.
With an E or an A on the gray?
With an E.
With an E. Duh. No. All right, cool. So yeah, check that out. Get your swag before Festival of Champions comes along. You don't want to miss it. So we're going to do some questions here. Our first question coming up right now, it comes from user Apache8080, I believe. And we're going to pop it up on screen. All right, cool. This is for Jack, because you were in Houston. Jack, was there actually a breeze on the field at Minute Maid, and was it affecting shooting at all?
I did not notice a breeze on the field. And I think everyone was too focused on the sunlight glare making their autos not work and their manual shooting not work to notice a breeze. So sunlight was the only real issue. I didn't notice a breeze at all.
The quick story I can tell is people were getting confused because we were in a dome, so the roof was closed, but the flags inside the dome were swaying in the breeze. So then if you looked off to the right, you saw a huge fan that was just blowing wind at the flag. So I'm wondering if maybe if people were getting confused.
There were definitely some air currents. Anytime you've got a large venue like that, especially when you've got sun coming down and heating up some parts more than others, right, there's going to be some air movement. I don't know if I'd call it a breeze, but
well, at least of all the elements that perpetrated something on this year, we got water, we got heat, fire, no wind this year, and heart, of course. Heart. Let's get to our next question, which I think is going to be a really good one. This question was asked by user it's M. Is it M? Lavin? I can't pronounce that. Sorry, dude. What are the thoughts on the round robin format? Did you like it? Ooh. So, Jack, why don't you start us off with round robin? Because I know you mentioned that you had a lot to talk about with this.
So, I think if you have 6 divisions, the round robin is really the only appropriate way to address it. So I really like that they went down that way. However, I think with the way they shaped the rules, they left it too open to skullduggery. In that, it wasn't just about, who beat who. So, you could have gotten into, you have these top 3 teams and, A beat B, but B beat C, and then C beats A, and then you go to deciding points, where you could have just looked at, well, this person beat both of them, and that person beat that with more points, so then they should move on. Because, you end up with these teams that might have just had 3 losses and then could decide, what, do we want to be remembered as the team that lost 3 times on Einstein, or do we want to be remembered as the team that stopped the Roebling Alliance or the Newton Alliance from making it to finals? And there's just too much freedom there and no real recourse for them to just go camp 3 gear pegs and just say, well, you're not scoring enough points this match, and then there goes your chance of winning. It just relies on teams to do the right thing too much.
Well, I think it's more than just relying on teams to do the right things. There's also actively incentives. I'll say, if you have the traditional bracketed format, when you have 8 alliances, there's no such thing as a dead match. Every single match matters, right? Whereas when you have the round robin format, and we saw this a little bit in 2015 as well, but there was less opportunity for teams to really affect what the other alliance was actually doing there. So it wasn't as sort of obvious as a potential issue. But you have matches potentially where the outcome doesn't matter for either alliance, or the outcome doesn't matter for one alliance as far as their chances of moving on goes. And so then, you get into the situation where Jack's talking about, where it's like they've really got nothing to play for other than maybe to try and demonstrate that they can beat this other alliance by whatever means it takes, even if it's not really playing the game the way that they would normally play it if they're trying to win a match. So I think we got a little bit lucky this year in the last match in the round robin format at both of our championships mattered to both teams playing. But it could have just as easily been, depending on the alliances and the way that the scheduling worked, that neither of those teams had a shot to make it into finals, and we're literally watching a match where it doesn't matter for either team playing, and nobody likes to play that match.
Or more dangerous, an alliance that has no chance versus a team that it's their only chance to make it.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2015, if there was a match with no chance, and we saw this a couple times, especially at off-season events, where if there was no realistic chance you could beat any team and get into the top score, at least when people would goof off, they would like make a stack of like 12 or something, and it'd be kind of funny to see a stack of 12 on the field. But
or knock stacks over, for like put them all up and then just go knock them all down at the end. Like
yes, I mean at least that was kind of funny. But I mean, even in the last matches in Houston, there were scenarios that could have occurred that would have guaranteed people advancing that like would have broken rules in first, like broken the collusion rules that they put in, but would have been theoretically possible to like guarantee slots or make sure certain people couldn't get in, like you were saying, Jack, by like not playing the game right. And it's kind of one of those weird scenarios. But as far as an entertainment perspective is concerned, I liked it though. Clinton, you were going to say something?
Well, I mean, the other thing that's weird to me is that in your divisions, you're playing a standard format of, quarters, semis, and finals, where win-loss is what matters and moves you on. And then you take a short little break for 15 matches and play where winning matters above all, but secondly to that is scoring as many points as possible. And then we go back to win-loss only matters in the end to determine who wins the entire event. So from a strategic standpoint, it's two different styles of games you want to play. You can't really pull off strategies that would ensure that you get the win. If you have something go wrong and you don't get every single win, some of those strategies don't warrant high scoring matches. The other thing is, personally, I like to have our team look at what happened in our first match and assess the situation and play differently depending on how that first match went. Where now you're kind of going in and playing one time. That's it. You get one shot at that team. You don't get to adjust anything. You don't get to modify anything. And it takes a lot of the fun out of it, in my opinion, of strategizing to play different teams in different situations.
Yeah.
So does anybody else have any thoughts? Because I actually had a thought how to fix it. Oh, go ahead, Kevin. You go first.
Yeah. It was an unusual thing, I think, for St. Louis rather than for Houston in the round robin, was just how fast the matches went. We played matches 3, 5, 7, and you were immediately put back into queue, and then once the match on the field ended, you were right back on the field. It was the fastest match cycle I've ever participated in, and it was so unusual compared to the rest of the event, and especially on Einstein for finals, where they give you as much time as you need. Those matches were brutal. Since we ran 3, 5, 7 right off the bat, like our robots were not in great shape for match 7, and we were lucky to get I think 2767 was soldering some wires back together in line, trying to get back on the field, and we didn't even get to discuss who we're playing against. So we only knew who we were playing against. We didn't have any insights of what they wanted to do, so we were just going out there hoping for the best. And I would like to see in future years, if this is the format they go with, take breaks between each of the rounds, because it seems like they were in quite a rush just to get out there.
But they ended on time.
Yes.
Well, that's the thing. I think that perhaps a bit of a whiplash almost from Houston, right? Where Houston was a very slow-moving event, we'll say. That maybe it was just like we got to end on time. If we're late even by a minute, we're going to be in huge trouble, right? So.
There were a lot of night and day differences. I mean, just for one, the actual camera angles of St. Louis was just beautiful. I mean, being at home watching it was fantastic. I felt like I was there with how well you can see everything going on that field.
I think.
Go ahead, Evan.
Well, what was I going to say? This year is the first year where they've actually officially removed the ability to take a timeout on Einstein. So that's kind of a double whammy with what Kevin's saying about, like, if you're playing round robin and you're going real quick and your robot breaks, like, I mean, we saw it with 67. They had a drivetrain issue. They sat out a match that I think it was actually the match against 254.
No. Nope.
Or it was the match against Titanium's Alliance that they sat out. But it was one that I personally was really looking forward to, the kind of the clash of the different styles going against it, especially knowing, Titanium's entire alliance, nobody had any traction wheels, right? So they were kind of glass cannon, shoot and run gears as fast as you can, but potentially susceptible to defense. And that's what 67 was just absolutely mastering to get out of the division. And then, you have an issue and no timeouts, quick turnaround, you got to sit.
The match of 67 is also an example of where, at that point, their likelihood to make it to the finals was slim. Right. And so they kind of went out and they proved, hey, we can beat them if we take a different approach to it. And they were able to beat the 254 27-67 Alliance. But in the end, it didn't matter because the formatting was of the round robin.
So I have a solution. Okay, bear with me. So we have now 12 divisions, right? And it works easily if you've got 4 or 8 championships. So if you take 12 and divide by 3, you're back to 4. So obviously 3 champs fixes this problem, no problem, right? Put one in championship 4 or 4 champs. I guess you could do that too. But if we do 3 champs,
I think we're moving in the wrong direction here.
Yeah. So actually, personally,
no words.
I think you could actually solve this. I'm a fan of the having the 6 division champs make it to Einstein, and then having 2 wild cards, and the 2 wild cards are the people that may have scored the most on average in their division, or something of that nature. So you got 2 people that kind of come up that were finalists, maybe on a strong division. Let's just say, Daly, they scored high as well. They just got beat out by a better alliance, but they would be able to beat some of the other divisions. They should make it to Einstein. It turns out to be about the same number of matches, depending on whether or not you go 3 rounds or not. So
that's actually interesting.
And get more people on Einstein, right?
That's true.
Yep.
That's what the whole thing's all about, right? More people.
I want to get more people seeing it, right?
Yeah. So, all right. I think that's going to be it for questions. Gentlemen, Jack, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time out of your days to come on the show and share your stories. Congratulations to the both of you. I live in Massachusetts, so I hope that I get to see you guys in Manchester in a couple of months.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, because I'd love to make it out there. And I know our whole alliance would love to go and settle the score once and for all.
There you go.
So,
so here's a quick question: do you think you guys make money on shirts when you sell them?
Once we get the store set up right, yes.
Okay, cool. Come to Manchester so Francis can have his dream, please, and Jack and his students too.
Yeah. Well, let's hope First helps us out, and it sounds like it's going to be a big show and a really exciting event, and I would hate for my students to miss it because we can't afford it as a team, because it is, winning a first championship is so hard that it really is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. All right, well, good luck to both you gentlemen and your teams going forward. Everybody who's watching, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and thank you so much for joining us this season. It's been crazy from start to finish. Our GameSense season started way back when we revealed the game back in October, the name of the game back in October, when we had Frank and Emma on, all those many, many months ago, all the way through the regular competition season, all the way through both championships, First Champ Live, with check-in, and now we're here at the end of this season here. But stay tuned. There's a lot more coming, not only just Chessy Champs, but hopefully a lot more, maybe some stuff in July. No promises. But we're but guys, thank you for watching. Thank you everybody at home. Thank you everybody on our RoboSports Network for doing a great job this season. And we hope you have a great evening and a great off season. So bye-bye for now, though.